In the heart of Shanghai, where neon lights flicker against smoky night markets and every street corner carries the scent of sizzling woks, one woman stood above the chaos, Chef Lin Wei, a rising culinary star known for turning ordinary ingredients into emotional experiences. But on the night her restaurant earned its long-awaited Michelin inspection, something happened that would forever change her life. A review was published, cruel, cutting, and strangely personal, written by a critic infamous for ending careers overnight. And worse, the world soon learned he had targeted Lin deliberately. What no one expected was the love story that followed. Chef Lin Wei, 32, wasn't new to pressure. Growing up in a tiny Sichuan village, she learned early that life rewarded flavors, not fear. She mastered the wok by age 7 and ran the family noodle stall by 13. After moving to Shanghai, she clawed her way up from dishwasher to executive chef. Her restaurant, Red Ember, had become a small but passionate sensation. Food lovers called her the woman who cooks feelings. Yet in the world of culinary fame, a single powerful enemy could erase everything. And this enemy came in the form of Lu Chun, the coldest critic in China. Lu Chun was known for his ruthless honesty. His words could shatter months of hard work or rocket an unknown chef to overnight stardom. Tall, poised, and famously unreadable, he wrote reviews like surgical strikes, clean, swift, devastating. While the public admired his integrity, chefs feared him. Lu Chun visited restaurants anonymously, avoiding bribery and manipulation. But what no one knew was that he carried a quiet bitterness born from losing his mother, once a brilliant chef, to corruption in the industry. Since then, he believed exposing flaws was more important than celebrating talent. And somehow, Lien's restaurant became his next target. His review on Red Ember wasn't typical criticism, it was a full character assassination. He called Lien's signature fire-kissed noodles emotionally hollow, her dumplings technically confused, and her famed chili citrus broth a desperate attempt to impress tourists. The internet erupted overnight. Food forums called her overrated. Influencers mocked her dishes for clicks. Reservations plummeted. Lin didn't sleep. She read the review again and again, hands shaking. It wasn't just harsh, it was untruthful. Every detail he described was wrong, as if he had never actually tasted her food. Something was off, something intentional, and she intended to find out why. The next morning, the kitchen felt colder. Lien's staff moved quietly, afraid to mention the review. Some avoided eye contact. Others whispered in corners. Investors called, demanding explanations. Her mother advised her to ignore the noise, but Lin felt something burn inside her, a mix of anger and heartbreak. She decided to track down Lu Chun and confront him. Not with aggression, but with the truth. If he wanted to destroy her reputation, she at least deserved to know why. So she walked into his world, the world of critics, press conferences, and culinary politics, determined to defend everything she had built. She found him at the Shanghai Culinary Expo, surrounded by reporters, answering questions with the indifference of a man discussing weather, not livelihoods. Lin approached him calmly, her chef's coat crisp despite her exhaustion. "Did you even taste my food?" she asked. Lu Chen's expression didn't change. "I tasted enough," he replied. "Your restaurant lacks authenticity." The conversation drew attention. Cameras turned. People murmured. But Lin didn't back down. "Authenticity isn't a flavor," she said. "It's a story. And you didn't give mine a chance." For the first time, Lu Chen hesitated, like her words had pierced something unexpected. After the confrontation went viral, public sympathy began shifting. People admired Lien's composure and courage. Some began doubting the critics' motives. Social media demanded he revisit the restaurant. Sponsors reached out to her supportively. The pressure left Lu Chen shaken. He wasn't used to the public questioning him. For reasons he couldn't explain, Lien's eyes haunted him that night. They weren't angry, they were wounded. And that bothered him more than he expected. Against his own rigid principles, he ordered a second anonymous visit to Red Ember, determined to reassess, but this time, with a mind he forced to remain neutral. He went disguised. Casual clothing, no notebook, no camera. The restaurant was half empty, a sign of his earlier review's damage. Lin herself brought him his dishes, not knowing who he was. She greeted him with a tired smile, still carrying grace despite the storm around her. He tasted the broth first and froze. It was extraordinary, bold yet comforting, fiery yet elegant, completely different from what he remembered. Or had he even tasted it properly before? Dish after dish, his certainty unraveled. Everything was exceptional. Everything contradicted his review. Guilt crept in like a slow, unwelcome warmth. He left without revealing his identity, but that night he couldn't sleep. His earlier review had been influenced, subtly, indirectly, by whispers from jealous competitors who wanted Lien removed from the Michelin race. He hadn't verified their claims thoroughly. It was the first time in his career he had allowed external voices to shape his pen, unconsciously or not. Now, knowing the truth tasted better than his pride, he felt something new, remorse. But how do you apologize to someone whose dreams you almost crushed? How do you face someone whose talent outshines your ego? He wasn't sure. The next day, Lu Chen did something unprecedented. He returned to Red Ember openly, without disguise, without arrogance. The staff froze. Guests whispered. A critic of his status never returned once, let alone twice. Lien walked out of the kitchen, confused. "Why are you here?" she asked. He inhaled deeply. "To make things right," he said. But apologies were not his strength. He stumbled through his words, admitting he had misjudged her work. Lien watched him carefully, unsure whether to be angry or relieved. She didn't forgive him, not immediately. But she sensed sincerity in his discomfort, and that surprised her. At his request, she cooked for him again, this time with both of them aware of who she was feeding. As she moved through the kitchen, he saw something he had never paid attention to before, the intimacy between a chef and her ingredients. Lien handled every herb, every chili, every noodle with intention. Cooking wasn't her job, it was her language, her soul. When he tasted her dishes again, openly, it was almost overwhelming. Each flavor carried history, emotion, pain, hope. For the first time in years, he felt something while eating. Something he didn't have a word for yet. After finishing the meal, Lu Chen walked outside for fresh air. The skyline glowed behind him, reflecting off the Huangpu River. Lien joined him quietly. She expected more criticism, more guarded professionalism, but instead he said, "Your food, it feels like home." The vulnerability in his voice startled her. She realized then that beneath his harsh reviews and icy persona, there was a man deeply wounded by his past. For the first time, she saw him not as an enemy, but as a complicated human being. And something in her softened, just a little. In the following days, Lu Chen wrote a new article, not a review, but a confession. He publicly admitted his earlier judgment was flawed and apologized to Lien. It sent shockwaves across the culinary world. Critics never apologized. Ever. His honesty revived interest in Red Ember. Reservations surged. Investors returned. Lien's staff cried in relief. But more surprisingly, the public praised Lu Chen for his integrity, calling it the bravest thing he'd ever written. He didn't mention it, but the person who inspired that bravery was Lien. He found himself wanting to understand her more. Maybe too much. With the increased attention on both of them, reporters started speculating about their dynamic. Some claimed they were rivals forced into truce. Others hinted at something deeper. To avoid fueling rumors, Lien and Lu Chen met privately, first for professional follow-ups, then for conversations that drifted unexpectedly into personal territory. He learned she loved old folk songs. She learned he preferred books over people. He learned she feared failure. She learned he feared emotional attachment. And slowly, without either intending it, friendship began blending into something neither could fully label. Their meetings became a quiet ritual. Some evenings he would sit in her kitchen after closing, watching her experiment with new dishes. Other nights, she joined him at late-night tea houses, listening to his stories about growing up in Beijing, lonely and burdened by expectations. They shared shortcomings, her impatience, his perfectionism. They shared laughter, rare for him, radiant for her. Lien began seeing the gentleness hidden behind his guarded exterior. Lu Chen began seeing the strength behind her softness. The world around them kept working, eating, judging, but for those moments, everything else disappeared. Still, they both knew a line existed between them. She was a chef, he was a critic. Their professions were natural opposites. Any hint of romantic involvement would scandalize the industry. Rivals would accuse him of favoritism, accuse her of manipulation. The Michelin committee would disqualify her. And so they danced around their feelings, careful but drawn closer each day. Neither wanted to ruin the other's future. But feelings aren't polite. They grow in silence, in stolen glances, in conversations that stretch too long. And despite their fears, the universe kept pushing them together. One night, a late delivery forced Lien to close the restaurant early. With nothing else planned, she invited Lu Chen to taste test a new dish, spicy lotus root stew infused with tangerine peel. As they prepared it together, their hands brushed over the same ingredient. They froze. The air changed. For a moment, the outside world fell away, leaving only two people standing too close, breathing the same citrus spice air. Lien stepped back quickly, clearing her throat. "Sorry," she whispered. "I shouldn't," but Lu Chen gently shook his head. "It's okay," he said softly. "I'm the one who's afraid." He didn't explain what he meant, but she understood. Fear of vulnerability, fear of repeating the past, fear of destroying what they had. She felt the same. So they cooked in silence again, the tension between them warm but unspoken. When the stew was ready, he tasted it and closed his eyes. "It reminds me of my mother," he said. Lien's heart tightened. He rarely mentioned her. It was the first time she realized how deeply her food affected him, not just physically but emotionally. And suddenly, this connection felt bigger than criticism in cuisine. But love stories, real ones, never unfold without conflict. When a paparazzi photo of them leaving a tea house together surfaced online, scandal erupted. Speculation exploded across Weibo and Culinary blogs. Critics accused Lu Chen of bias. Chefs claimed Lien had seduced her way into good press. The Michelin committee announced an internal review. Overnight, everything they had rebuilt began to crumble. Lien avoided him. She feared being seen as unprofessional. Lu Chen tried to protect her, but every statement he made only fueled the controversy. The industry turned vicious, and for the first time, both felt powerless. The pressure hit Lien harder. Customers questioned her integrity. Competitors mocked her on social media. Some staff members feared the Michelin team would blacklist the restaurant. Even though nothing romantic had happened between her and Lu Chen, the suspicion alone was enough to destroy her credibility. She began distancing herself emotionally, focusing solely on the kitchen. When Lu Chen came to speak with her, she avoided his eyes. "This can't continue," she said quietly. "We're hurting each other's careers." He wanted to argue, but deep down he knew she was right. And heartbreak settled in his chest. Still, Lu Chen refused to disappear. Instead, he took responsibility publicly, holding a press conference in which he clarified that he had no romantic involvement with Lien and that their connection was strictly professional. The reporters grilled him, accusing him of favoritism, emotional bias, and ethical failure. Yet he didn't break. "If you must blame someone, blame me," he said firmly. "But do not punish a chef who did nothing wrong." It was one of the most vulnerable moments of his life, and though it silenced some critics, it couldn't fully erase the stain of suspicion. The Michelin committee announced that they would still visit Red Ember anonymously before making their final decision. It was a small victory, but a chance nonetheless. Lien threw herself into preparing for the unpredictable evaluation. She studied old recipes, refined new ones, and pushed her staff harder than ever. Lu Chen stayed away during this time, respecting her space, though every day he fought the urge to see her. Their separation wasn't dramatic. It was quiet and aching, like a melody cut off mid-note. But both understood that this distance was necessary to protect her dream. One evening, as Lien practiced a new dish, ginger-scented crab dumplings in saffron broth, she suddenly felt overwhelmed by exhaustion and emotion. She broke down in the empty kitchen, tears spilling onto the stainless steel counter. She wasn't crying because of a controversy, but because she missed him. Lu Chen had become part of her world, part of her rhythm, and losing him felt like losing color from her days. That night, she realized something she had tried to suppress. She was in love with the man who had once tried to destroy her. And now she didn't know what to do. Across the city, Lu Chen felt the absence just as sharply. He wandered through night markets aimlessly, staring at dishes he once judged harshly. The world seemed duller without her laughter, her spark, her stubborn optimism. He wondered whether he should confess his feelings after the Michelin evaluation or disappear from her life completely. His heart battled his logic. He tried writing reviews to distract himself, but every sentence reminded him of her. And so he waited, silently hoping that destiny hadn't already closed the door on them. The Michelin inspector's visit came without warning. A quiet man with subtle mannerisms entered Red Ember one chilly afternoon, ordering dishes strategically known to be signature Michelin assessments. The entire staff operated like clockwork, but stress tinged every movement. Lien cooked with precision, channeling every emotion into her creations: grief, hope, fear, love. When the inspector finished his meal and quietly slipped out, the whole restaurant exhaled in unison. But nothing was guaranteed. The next few weeks would be a torturous wait, and during that time, she kept thinking of Lu Chen, wondering where he stood in her heart. During those silent weeks, Shanghai moved on with its chaotic rhythm, but Lien lived in limbo. She filled her hours cooking obsessively, tweaking every detail of every dish. Late one night, as she wiped down the kitchen counters, she found a small envelope slipped under the restaurant door. There was no name, just a simple message written in elegant handwriting: "Your food deserves the world. And so do you." She recognized the handwriting instantly. It was Lu Chen's. For the first time in weeks, she smiled. He was still there, still believing in her. And that meant everything. Finally, the day of the Michelin announcement arrived. Chefs across China tuned in online, praying for stars that could change their lives. Lien and her staff gathered around a small computer in the restaurant's office, hands trembling. When Red Ember was announced as earning its first Michelin star, the room erupted in screams, tears, and cheers. Lien collapsed into a chair, overwhelmed. Her dream hadn't just survived, it had triumphed. And though her team hugged her, celebrated her, she found herself glancing at the door, wishing the one man who believed in her most deeply was there. Later that night, after the celebrations faded and the staff went home, Lien stepped outside into the cool Shanghai air. Fireworks echoed faintly from distant neighborhoods. She felt both victorious and empty. Then she saw him, waiting across the street, hands in his pockets, eyes reflecting the streetlights. Lu Chen walked toward her slowly, hesitantly. "Congratulations," he said softly. She nodded, tears in her eyes. "Thank you." Silence hung between them, heavy with emotion. "You did this," he added. "Not because of me, not despite me, just you." And for the first time, she felt truly seen. They stood there in the quiet, unsure of who should speak first. Then Lien whispered, "I missed you." The words escaped before she could think. Lu Chen's breath caught. "I missed you too," he said. His voice shook slightly, something she had never heard before. He stepped closer, careful and slow, as if approaching something fragile. "I didn't want to ruin your chance," he added. She looked up at him, eyes soft. "You didn't. You protected it." That moment broke whatever final wall existed between them. A rare moment of vulnerability they could no longer deny. They didn't kiss, not yet. Their story was too complex, too fragile to rush. Instead, they walked together along the riverbank, talking quietly about everything and nothing. Lu Chen admitted his fears, his regrets, his struggle with vulnerability. Lien shared her insecurities, her dreams, and the loneliness hidden behind her success. As the city glowed around them, two people from opposite worlds finally found a shared rhythm, slow, tender, and real. They weren't ready to call it love out loud, but it lived inside their silence. A soft flame growing brighter with every step they took side by side. In the weeks that followed, they navigated their newfound closeness carefully. They avoided public outings, choosing private spaces where the world couldn't intrude. Lien cooked for Lu Chen at home, experimenting with flavors that expressed what she couldn't yet say verbally. And he, in return, shared books, poems, and music that helped her understand the depth of his mind. It was a slow, beautiful unraveling, two guarded people learning to trust. Every meal became a conversation. Every silence became a confession. Their connection deepened, not through grand gestures, but through the quiet consistency of being present for each other. But public scrutiny wasn't gone. Some critics continued questioning Lu Chen's objectivity. Others accused Lien of manipulating him emotionally. A few tabloids went as far as publishing speculative timelines and false rumors. At first, Lien wanted to hide again. The restaurant had just gained a star. She didn't want to risk everything. But Lu Chen encouraged her gently. "Let them talk," he said. "They don't know us." His calm confidence steadied her. She realized that hiding would only give power to lies. What mattered was the truth they shared, quiet, honest, and growing stronger with each passing day. Eventually, they decided to confront the narrative, not defensively, but authentically. Lien agreed to a documentary interview about her journey, not mentioning any personal details about Lu Chen. Instead, she focused on resilience, perseverance, and the emotional power of food. Her authenticity captivated viewers. She became a symbol of integrity in a competitive industry. Lu Chen, inspired by her courage, resumed his work with renewed purpose. He wrote reviews with greater emotional intelligence, balancing honesty with empathy. The industry noticed the shift, and slowly, the perception of both of them began evolving, individually and together. Meanwhile, Red Ember flourished. The Michelin star brought international attention. Tourists traveled across continents to taste Lien's dishes. Food bloggers flooded her reservations. But Lien stayed grounded. She refused to raise prices drastically or compromise authenticity for trends. Instead, she expanded the menu, incorporating her childhood recipes and experimenting with modern interpretations. Her cooking remained deeply emotional, joyful, nostalgic, honest. Lu Chen watched her evolution with awe. "You cook feelings," he once told her. She laughed, replying, "And you write them." For the first time in their lives, they felt they were becoming better versions of themselves. As their connection deepened, Lien began noticing things about Lu Chen others missed. The way he observed everything quietly. The way his eyes softened when he watched her cook. The way he struggled to express affection but showed it through actions, bringing her rare spices, fixing things in her kitchen, walking her home after long shifts. Lu Chen wasn't dramatic. He wasn't loud. His love, when it finally appeared, was gentle and steady. Lien realized she didn't need grand declarations. She needed someone who stayed. And that was exactly what he did. Consistently, silently, faithfully. Still, they had one more challenge to face, the fear of mixing their professional worlds. Lien worried that any public confirmation of their relationship would undermine everything she had worked for. Lu Chen feared that stepping back from reviewing her restaurant might be seen as favoritism. But love thrives in honesty, not secrecy. One night, after a quiet dinner at Lien's apartment, they talked openly about their fears. She admitted she didn't want to lose him. He admitted he was willing to resign from reviewing her district to protect her credibility. It was the first time he chose love over career. They made their relationship official privately first, telling close friends, then staff members. The reactions were overwhelmingly supportive. "We all knew something was brewing," joked one of her sous chefs. Even industry colleagues began respecting the maturity with which they handled their boundaries. Lu Chen formally requested reassignment to another region, allowing him to continue his career ethically. His editors agreed, impressed by his professionalism. When they finally announced their relationship publicly, there was criticism, yes, but far less than before. The world had seen their integrity, and integrity always leaves fewer shadows for rumors to hide in. The relationship blossomed. They traveled together, quiet trips to Chengdu, Hangzhou, and Guilin. Lien introduced him to street foods he had never tried because of his critic persona. He introduced her to libraries and quiet gardens where she could rest her mind. They discovered shared passions, history, music, the beauty of simplicity. Their differences didn't pull them apart, they anchored them. She taught him warmth. He taught her calm. She taught him to feel. He taught her to see. Love, in their world, wasn't fireworks. It was slow-burning and enduring, like broth simmering to perfection. One evening, during a lantern festival in Chengdu, they sat by the river watching lights float across the water. The night was warm, filled with laughter from families around them. Lien leaned her head on his shoulder and whispered, "I never thought my enemy would become my peace." Lu Chen smiled gently. "And I never thought the chef I tried to tear down would be the one to rebuild me." It was an honest confession, two flawed people acknowledging the unlikely path that brought them together. Lanterns drifted past them like blessings. It felt like the universe was finally rooting for them. But their journey wasn't just romance, it was growth. Lien opened culinary workshops for young chefs, teaching not just techniques, but emotional connection to food. Lu Chen began mentoring aspiring food writers, emphasizing empathy alongside critique. They both wanted to improve the industry, not survive it. Their shared purpose deepened their bond. They attended events together, though they still kept certain boundaries to avoid conflicts of interest. Colleagues began seeing them not as scandal, but as partners in progress. Slowly, they became one of the most respected duos in China's culinary world. Yet love, even when strong, brings challenges. Lien's increasing schedule sometimes clashed with Lu Chen's assignments. There were days when they barely saw each other, days when exhaustion made conversations short and sharp. But instead of letting cracks grow, they communicated openly. "We're different," Lien often said, "but we're learning." And they were. They learned compromise, patience, and the importance of choosing each other even on stressful days. Their relationship wasn't perfect, but it was real. And real love survives through imperfect moments, not in spite of them, but because of them. A year after earning her Michelin star, Lien was invited to cook at an international culinary festival in Paris. It was the opportunity of a lifetime. She was nervous, worried her flavors might not resonate with European palates. But Lu Chen encouraged her wholeheartedly. "Your food speaks any language," he said. "Let the world hear it." And so she went, carrying with her not just ingredients from home, but confidence born from their shared journey. Her presentation received a standing ovation. Chefs from around the world admired her boldness and emotional depth. She had officially entered global recognition. When Lien returned to Shanghai, she found Lu Chen waiting at the airport with a bouquet of jasmine, her favorite. "You did it," he told her. She laughed. "We did it." Their embrace drew curious glances, but neither cared. They were past the stage of hiding from the world. Love, they realized, was strongest when lived authentically. That night, they held each other a little longer, grateful for the chaos that had once torn them apart. If not for the storm, they might never have found each other. Sometimes destruction leads to rebirth. Their love was proof. Months passed, and Lien decided to open a second restaurant, a smaller, more personal space reflecting her Sichuan roots. Lu Chen supported her through every step, but refused to influence any reviews or publicity. He wanted her success to be purely hers. The restaurant became a soulful, intimate haven for diners who wanted authenticity without pretense. And though she never said it aloud, Lien built the space with him in mind. Many dishes were inspired by their shared memories, meals cooked together, ingredients that held emotional weight. It was no longer just her story, it was their story. One evening, after a long day at the new restaurant, Lien found Lu Chen waiting for her outside. He looked unusually nervous. She teased him. "Did you burn another pot of tea?" He shook his head, taking her hands. "No, I just have something to ask you." Her heart paused. He took a slow breath, eyes trembling with emotion. "Lien, you changed my world. You taught me to feel again, to forgive myself, to love." Then he knelt down, holding a simple ring. Elegant, understated, meaningful. "Will you let me spend the rest of my life learning from you?" Tears filled her eyes instantly. For a moment, she couldn't speak. All the challenges, misunderstandings, fears, they dissolved into the quiet beauty of that moment. She nodded, covering her mouth as emotion overflowed. "Yes," she whispered. 1,000 times yes. Lu Chen exhaled in relief, standing to embrace her. Their kiss wasn't dramatic. It was soft, slow, the kind that felt like returning home. People nearby clapped, but the world around them blurred. In that single moment, they weren't chef and critic, enemies turned allies. They were simply two souls who had finally found where they belonged. Their engagement became a symbol, not of scandal, but of growth, forgiveness, and unity. The culinary world buzzed with excitement. Instead of judgment, they received congratulations from chefs, critics, and fans alike. Lien's story inspired aspiring chefs everywhere. Lu Chen's evolution showed critics that empathy and honesty could coexist. Together, they built a partnership grounded not in perfection, but an understanding. Their wedding was small, intimate, filled with close friends, family, and dishes from their shared journey. The vows they exchanged weren't poetic. They were simple promises to support, respect, and challenge each other for a lifetime. As the years passed, their love deepened. They traveled, cooked, wrote, argued, reconciled, laughed, and learned. Lien continued earning accolades, eventually opening a culinary academy focused on emotional cooking. Lu Chen published a book about ethical criticism dedicated to her. They didn't seek fame, they sought purpose. Their careers flourished because they remained grounded in authenticity. And through every season of life, they returned to the same truth. They were better together. Their imperfections complemented each other like contrasting spices creating harmony in a dish. They weren't perfect, but they were perfect for each other. Looking back, Lien often marveled at the absurdity of their beginning. A cruel review meant to destroy her nearly became the catalyst for her greatest love. Lu Chen, too, reflected on how a mistake led him to rediscover humanity. They realized that sometimes the people who challenge us the most are the ones who help us grow. Their story wasn't fairy tale perfection. It was real, messy, courageous. A journey of breaking and rebuilding, hurting and healing. And in the end, love prevailed, not because it was easy, but because they chose it again and again. Their story became one of the most whispered legends in China's culinary world, the tale of a Chinese chef who fell for the food critic who tried to destroy her career, and how their unlikely bond reshaped not only their lives, but the industry around them. In a world obsessed with judgment and perfection, they proved that vulnerability could be power, that forgiveness could be nourishment, and that love, like food, was best when shared honestly. As they stood together in the kitchen of their shared future, they knew one thing for certain: the greatest flavors in life come from the most unexpected sparks. Thanks for watching.